Welcome back to the Backcountry PA Podcast. This is your host, Cody. This is episode 142. On this episode, I had the honor and pleasure of sitting down with Gunnar Emberg from Pennsylvania, also known as the Hungry Huntsman on the IG. I've been wanting to have him on for a while. He reached out to us a while back, and things just got really hectic. He actually just now is focusing primarily on being a Wildgame Chef. We talk about how he got into being a Wildgame Chef, his very first hunt. We talk about how he got into hunting in general. We talk about how his season went as well. We talk about how he's become a better woodsman. His first gig was with Beau Martonik at his first big mountain scouting camp up here in Pennsylvania. Now this year he went back and did it again and cooked for more guys breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, if you look at his Instagram, he has some amazing food. He gave me one of his recipes that he came up with. I cooked it for this episode. It was delicious. I'll put a link in the description. You guys can go check it out. But really highly recommend go checking him out. Also check out some of his rub, so you can go check that out on the Instagram. And go give him a follow. Reach out to him if you want him to cook for anything you have or anything like that. But really, it was a great honor to have Gunnar on the episode. It was fun talking to him. Could talk to him for hours. But really hope you guys enjoy it, and remember to keep hunting, keep fishing, keep your tradition, and always enjoy the finger process. The hardest part of not eating the queso, I'm not going to lie, was the spoon. Like, I took the spoon out, and I almost licked it. I was like, nope, refrain yourself.
Yeah. It's
it's
amazing stuff, man. I took that, or I made it down in Alabama for the Spartan Forge guys. They ate themselves out of chips. Like I had bought 3 or 4 bags of chips, and they ate themselves out of chips, and we're trying to find other things to dip in that.
Just your finger. Just dip your finger in it.
Yeah, I think that's what they resorted to at one point. Just take a spoonful out and eat it at that point.
Yeah, because there was a lot in there. There was a lot of leftover queso in there. So like, I put some in the fridge, and I put some in the freezer. So I'm freezing some for like later on. And then there's like a little bit left. So I had like little crockery dishes, and I just scooped a little bit in there for my in-laws and then also for my parents. So I was like, just let them try it. She showed my wife, and she was like, "There's hardly anything in there." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a sample. It's not the whole thing."
No, that is the full recipe for that, actually.
Yeah.
That's just one of the more simple ones at that point, but
it was real simple. Hopefully, she said, she was like, "You must have followed a recipe because it tastes good." I was like, wow. And then I'm also hurt by the fact that you go, "Do you know how to cook? Are you any good at cooking?" I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, really?
I gotta ask, man. There's recipes I have that they're even a challenge for me, and then your typical dude would look at it and just be like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. I mean, there are times, I won't lie, that when my wife gave me a recipe to follow, I forgot to follow it, and I just like started putting stuff in, and then I was scrolling down the recipe, and like I said, oh, do this step first before you put all the ingredients in. I'm like, well, it's all in there now, so
yeah, see how it turns out. Screw it.
Yeah. And I only told her that I didn't follow the directions after she ate it, and she was like, "Yeah, it tastes pretty good." I was like,
well, good. There you go. Yeah.
Yep. So before we get into it, because I want to ask some questions about this recipe, and I really want to eat it.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners, who you are, how you got into pretty much being a wild game chef and hunting as well?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Gunnar Emberg, also known as the Hungry Huntsman as of late. I'm your kind of typical backwoods Pennsylvania kind of guy. Grew up kind of hunting and fishing, but nothing too serious. I go opening days. I go maybe a couple other days a year, but that's really all I learned. And we'd eat venison. I'd eat your typical, your butterfly steaks and your ground venison and stuff like that. But around here, it's, do you go old school with your cuts, or that's it? Nobody does anything else. And I joined the Navy right out of high school and ended up starting to hunt out in Illinois. But I was finally on my own, and I remember, I think my second day there, my one boss came to me. He's still one of my best friends to this day, and he's like, "Hey, going to the bow shop. You want to go buy a bow? And I was like 19. I had boot camp money. I was like, yeah, why not? Let's
Yeah.
do it. Ended up getting my first bow, and I just fell in love with it. And I have just been kind of steamrolling it from there, man. Like learning to build my own arrows, and now I'm with serious archery, and then learning to work on my own bows and everything like that, and just really diving into it, learning how to do it because the closest bow shop to me is an hour away right now.
Dang.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrible around here. And that my first thought was, all right, let's open a bow shop. And then I came to the realization that if I run a bow shop, people's bows break when it's hunting season. I got to be at
Mhm.
the bow shop. I can't go hunting, So
Mhm.
that kind of got put to the wayside. And when I got out of the Navy too, after I'd moved back and everything, I was more dabbling in cooking because growing up, my dad didn't want me watching cartoons all the time. He was like, put something educational on. And I was like, all right, whatever. He tried the History Channel and not really my thing, talking about aliens all the freaking time there. And I was like, all right, I'll put Food Network on. And to this day, that's what I claim for my knowledge. That's how I got trained how to cook was by watching Food Network instead of cartoons as a kid, man.
That is
And
awesome.
we just kept rolling with it from there. I'd introduce wild game into dishes. I'd try new dishes, and a lot of that came from having the confidence of knowing that I know how to fix a dish if I mess it up. Because I saw a dude mess it up on TV, and they told him how to fix it.
Yeah.
And it just kept going from there and kept going from there, and met a buddy who was really into barbecue and stuff, trying to break into the food world and everything. And I was like, well, I can do this with wild game,
Hmm.
right? So let me try that. And last year, April last year actually, Beau Martonik had another, his first scouting camp for whitetails, and I I took my shot, man. I shot my shot with Beau, and now
Yeah.
mind you, Beau and I grew up 20 minutes down the road from each other. Like, we kind of have family time. Like my wife's mom is best friends with his aunt and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I've known of him, I've known about him, everything like that, and I reached out and I was like, hey man, see you're doing this, let me come over and cook. And he was hesitant at first, but I mean everybody would be. Nobody's gonna
Yeah.
take a shot in the dark like that. And he let me do it, and supposedly I blew it out of the water because he paid me a little extra after that too. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And that was the Kickstarter moment, man. Like that feeling of like I feel accomplished right now, And I
Right.
was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to cook. I want to be involved in the hunting community and everything like that. And I met Bill from Spartan Forge there.
Hmm.
He took me down to Alabama in January to cook for a big veterans hunt with the Seek One production guys, everything like that too. And I just had Beau's event again a couple weeks ago here, and then last week Taylor from Tethered reached out to me, and I'm cooking for their 5-year anniversary down in Nashville too. So
Dang.
we're hoping to get this thing rolling, and really hooked up with a good guy too. He's putting me in multiple directions right now of
Mhm.
put some rubs out there, start making content creation type of stuff,
Mhm.
little videos, everything like that, just really kind of build this brand as much as I can.
Right. Yeah. I mean that has to be nerve wracking to go from not cooking for mostly your family, mostly family, friends, all that kind of stuff, and then you put yourself out there to go to Beau's scouting camp with, guys who can be good cooks themselves, and then like you're cooking for all these guys, like you're cooking. I imagine breakfast, lunch, dinner, all that kind of stuff, and it was just like it's a lot, like to bite off. So like there had to be a lot of nerves going through when you first stepped there and stepped in that kitchen.
There were some nerves there. I get to credit a lot of that to the Navy though. They basically made you think without emotion. So
Yeah.
I really was able to take that aspect out of it and still do just kind of what I knew how to do, and if it sucked, it sucked, then I knew this wasn't for me. If they didn't like it or if they were like, hey, I can do better. But the first year it wasn't too bad. It was only like 20 people for lunch and like
Mhm.
12 people for dinner. I don't think we had any food waste. I they gave me back clean plates every single time, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's awesome, man. And same thing down in Alabama, and that one was even closer because it was like, hey, we're spending 4 days together. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sleeping with these guys. I'm waking up, and yeah, it's a grueling schedule to do hunts like that. I'm up at 4 to start cooking breakfast, clean up, then I'll butcher some kills, clean up from that, prep for lunch, clean up, make an appetizer for dinner, clean up again, then dinner.
Yeah.
I don't stop cooking or cleaning until 9 o'clock at night, but I love it, man. I never get tired. And this year was the first year I got a little bit nervous for Beau. Lunch was about 45 people, and I've never done nearly that many.
Yeah.
The nice thing though about Kip's Lodge that we were on, it has a full, restaurant style kitchen.
Okay.
So I had plenty of room. I had a big enough stove. I knew I could make that happen there. Whereas out of my own kitchen, I'm not feeding 45 people lunch, man. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really kind of nerve wracking. The first biggest part too was after Beau's event, I told I told my great job at the brewery. Actually, I was head of logistics at a brewery, and I'm like, hey, I'm done. I quit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a month notice, and then that's it. I'm done. And I went to learn to be a butcher after that at a local butcher shop, just to, hey, what job can I go to that's gonna give me more skills at this point?
Mhm.
And that was it. Pay matched up pretty well, so it wasn't really a big change or anything like that. And after my event in January with Spartan Forge, I came back and I told them like, "Hey, I told you I'm going to give you a year here, and that's all I'm giving you, man. I'm going out on my own after this."
Yeah. Wow. That's diving deep into there. Like that's diving off the deep end. Like that, but that's like the American dream, right? Like to have your own
Right.
business, to do your own thing. Like I saw you come out with your own rubs now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Like it's a thing that you're passionate about and you want to go chase after that. And that's pretty freaking cool, man. Like that, to be a butcher and then also like to learn how to butcher a deer properly and then also cook that deer right after you butcher it or after it's hanging and all that kind of stuff. And then you get to cook that deer for whoever you're cooking for. Like that's awesome.
Yeah,
It
that
really
that
is.
was really cool. Down with the Spartan Forge guys too, like we bring kills back, and the guys there were super awesome too. I'm working all day. Some of
Mhm.
the guys would take care of skinning for me and stuff like that, and I think the last dinner we had there, I think we had 3 kills at that point. I took all the back straps out of them, marinated them like they were day old back straps pretty much. And that's what we had for dinner that night.
Yeah.
And that is just, you don't get that experience any other place.
Yeah. When you go to a restaurant that says farm to table, this is woods to table right off the bat.
Exactly. Yeah. Dude, funny story too. We down in Alabama, the place we were at, it was a like an old family camp basically, but it was up on stilts because it was next to a river.
Mhm.
Underneath was a lot of concrete, and they had a black stone down there that I was prepping breakfast on the next day, or for the next day.
Mhm.
And I had I brought my bow and my rifle down with me too, because he was kind of like, if pig comes out, you can shoot it or whatever. And uh, a doe had walked out, and I texted the guy. I was like, "Can I shoot her?" And he's like, "Absolutely, go right ahead." So as I'm cooking sausage, eggs, potatoes, everything, pull the rifle up, shoot her, drag her back, never turn the grill off, skinned her right there too. It was, and that's a memory I'll have forever, man.
Oh my gosh, that is epic. Did you cook her up right there then? Did you cook her up with anything on
She
the
was
grill?
in dinner that night, actually. Yeah, yeah,
Dang, that is awesome. That is awesome. Speaking of Alabama, I've been really wanting to taste his queso, and you said that
yeah.
you gave it to the guys in Alabama, and
Yep,
they licked the bowls clean.
pretty
So
much, man.
this is gonna be, if anyone doesn't like ASMR right now, they should probably like mute, mute their mics because oh. Mm, hmm.
You ain't got to say anything, man.
That's good. And of course, you said to have an IPA with it. So
Yeah.
having it's a Voodoo Ranger Hop Raider IPA,
Ah, yeah.
New Belgium.
Nice. Yeah, I think the hoppy notes you'll get from that and the bitterness will really play in with the Mexican spices there.
Yep. So for the listeners, tell them like how you came up with this and like what's in it. What's in this queso?
So I really came up with this because I make a really, really good buffalo chicken wing dip, right? I mean, it's addicting good. But I didn't want it. I needed another dip, right? And I looked up how to do some queso. I knew how to make a rough cheese sauce and stuff. Like I've made my own mac and cheese hundreds of times at this point, and I was like, I know really kind of where to start this, but what can I do? Because I want a queso that it's not hard when it's cold, but it also doesn't need to be 10 million degrees to be liquid and be able to be scoopable and everything like that. So my first thought was just reading throughout all the years here. Everybody says you can't make great queso without Velveeta or somewhat of the equivalent, right? And I was like, all right, as much as I don't like it and I don't want to use it because I really strive for like all natural ingredients or higher quality stuff, I was like, it's a dip, man. It's getting taken to hunting camps, it's getting taken to football games. Nobody cares when it's good. So, all right, I'll throw that in there. How do I keep it creamy though? And my addition to that was okay, milk or heavy cream. Why not do both? Go half and half, right? Well, then I wanted to up the flavor of that too, and I was like, you can't have queso without some sort of something else in it, right? I like it to have, your tomatoes, your chilies, give it some spice, a little bit of depth of flavor, but let's go even deeper with it. Let's make it good. Okay, let's add some frozen corn into this to give some pops of sweetness throughout this to break it up. And while we're at it, let's make it a wild game queso and throw some burger in there, whatever you have laying around. Cook it up, season it up, toss it right in. It's not like it's going to go bad. You can go to a Mexican restaurant and get the same dip there with meat, on top of it. So why not throw it in? And I was like, okay, I'm tasting this. It needs something else, though. It needs a better cheese flavor. I was like, I'll just add a bag of shredded cheese too, for the most part. Did that, got my seasonings right on it, and I don't think I've had any leftovers of that dip ever from that point on.
I'm still eating. So, when you told me to do this recipe, you said make sure you have a good taco seasoning.
Yeah.
What I used, I was standing in front of the taco seasoning. I was like, which one do I get? And I was like, I was looking for some reason. I'd grab Taco Bell mild seasoning. So, what seasoning would you recommend? Like, if you're going to grocery store, what taco seasoning, or is there a mixture of seasonings that you would recommend for this?
So I'll be honest with you, man. I get all of my blended seasonings from a company called Tacticalories. Great dude, grew up in PA too. He just moved his business to New York, basically, and that's where he's out of. I tried his stuff and I was flabbergasted. His steak rubs are great, but I prefer to use his taco seasoning for pretty much everything. I think it's called Battle, right? The label looks kick ass. The flavor is great on it too. Um, if that's not your style, you want to be able to pick something up at the store. What I look for when I'm shopping for seasonings as well is what doesn't come in a packet, basically. What isn't pre-portioned to, hey, add this to a pound of ground meat and go from there. I like hey, here's a shaker top. Put on as much as you want, something like that. Whether it be, for taco seasonings, if you find it in the Mexican aisle somewhere, or you're just in the spice aisle and they have like a, hey, here's a taco seasoning type of thing. Get it, try
Mhm.
it, see what you like really. Think of the best tacos you really ever had and see what you can kind of do to recreate that flavor out of it for the most part. And that's what I was doing for so long. Tried Casey's stuff from Tacticalories, and I was like, I'm done. I don't need to recreate this because he did it for me at this point.
Yeah. The best tacos I ever had. It was on my honeymoon, and it was alligator tacos down in Florida, in Key West. Those were probably the best tacos that I ever had.
That sounds delicious, honestly, man. I have two best tacos I've ever had. I was stationed in Texas for a while in San Antonio places too. That place ruined me for Mexican food, man. I cannot eat Mexican restaurant food any longer. Like The stuff down there was just
Yeah.
phenomenal down there. But then when this big taco trend started coming out, right? The liquid fry with cheese, the crispy type of thing, juicy, cheesy, it's
Mm-hmm.
fried, it looks delicious. All right, let's do it with wild game. So I did it with venison, and it was one of those. I bit into it, and the wife did too. We just looked at each other because it was just that good. We didn't have to say anything, man. We just looked at each other like, man, that is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the good kind of tacos right there. Like when they're freshly made tacos, like that's the best kind. Like Taco
Yeah.
Bell stuff is terrible. Like it's just terrible. I don't know why I grabbed Taco Bell seasoning. I think I was just flabbergasted by all the seasonings there, and I was just like, oh, which one do I get? Like it was kind of one of those like
Right.
quick, like making a rash decision type thing.
I turned to the thing. Imagine that when you get your hands on a better seasoning,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look into that. You said it was packed to seasoning, right?
tactic calories, like
Packed to
tactical and
calories. Okay.
calories put together. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna look into them because I always want to like try better seasonings. Like I used Hunt Chef. My wife loved the Hunt Chef stuff. He originally
Yeah.
stopped doing the we tried the sauces he had one year. Like he had
Hmm.
sauces that we tried and she loved that stuff. But he stopped
Yeah.
doing that now. But I think we still have one of his mixtures like for a dry rub or something like that. We still have that. So that's
Okay.
something we still haven't used yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So for this recipe, how many times do you have to like go back and like fix it before it's to the one that you just put out and it's like this is the perfect one right here?
So for this, really, uh, make a batch, right? I knew what base I was putting in it basically, and I was like, okay, now I just need to get my seasonings where they need to be, right? So I'd add them half teaspoon or teaspoon at a time basically to like go out where I wanted because I knew the amounts of everything like a whole block of Velveeta, a whole pound of ground meat, a whole bag of cheddar, a whole can of Rotel, just to make it easy, right? Be able to dump this in, get it
Mm-hmm.
going, whole block of cream cheese, everything, and then adjust my seasonings to what I just built in pot, right? So I would keep track of that the first time, get the rough numbers of where I thought it was going to be or what it was or whatever. I give it, a week or two until we got sick of eating it. You know, After that, make another batch, tried it with what I had wrote down, and then if it was good to go. That's the recipe from there on out.
Yeah.
I think this one was really only like 3 batches of it, and that's it before I had it
Okay.
nailed down. So
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward, honestly. Like it's very
yeah,
simple. Like you said, it a normal guy can do this. And like I said, I did it after I was done playing with my baby and done eating dinner with my wife. Like I was like, you know what, I might as well make this now instead of trying to do it right before the podcast and do that and rush around. But it took
right.
me, I think the estimated time on the recipe is like 40 minutes, and it took me probably 40 minutes. Like it added a little bit of time because I grind my meat up before I cook it.
Oh yeah,
I dice it up, put it in the
yep,
freezer, and then I grind it up and then put it in
yeah.
there. So being going and working for a butcher, what are some, because a lot of people hang their deer for a while, or
Yep.
some people take it and they butcher it right away. So what's the difference there?
Um, so there's two kind of schools of thought on that, right? The hanging it right away, you will get or not hanging it. I'm sorry, butchering it. You'll get
Mm-hmm.
right. You'll get the like, hey, it's still a little bit irony. It still has some of that gamey taste to it because it's it didn't get to drain its blood out or anything like that, or lose any moisture. Whereas hanging it is similar to aging a steak in a way, right? So when you let that thing hang, you're letting all the blood kind of drain out of it, letting some moisture drain out of it and everything like that, letting air kind of form a pellicle on the outside that, most people will end up cutting off, but I throw it right in my grind pile anyway. And
Mhm.
by doing that, you that deepen the flavor of the meat per se and take some of the gaminess out of it. So if you're looking to do, you know, kind of home style cooking where you're feeding your family and stuff, and you don't know if they're gonna like gaminess or not and stuff like that, age it a little bit. That's gonna take some of that out. That's where it's almost interchangeable with, beef for the most part of throwing it into whatever. It just needs a little bit of fat introduced into it to give it more moisture, essentially.
Dude, this queso. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told you, man, it's good.
I think the best thing about it is the sweet corn. Like honestly, like
Yeah.
I can taste the sweet corn in it.
That's why I threw that in there too. Just a little bit sweeter because that's a big thing. Is like sweetness makes it kind of addicting too. Like I
Hmm.
heard a long time ago that McDonald's puts sugar on their fries with salt, just enough where it's like you kind of have to keep eating it. Yeah.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense because their fries are really good, and you do want to keep eating them. And then
Yeah.
also, for some reason, their Coke tastes so much better.
Yeah. I know, man, and I think Coke developed a like special, dilution rate or recipe for McDonald's specifically. Like I don't think you can buy it. It's not just
Yeah.
regular Coke, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because it tastes completely different everywhere else. Like you go to Burger King, you go to Wendy's, all that kind of stuff. Completely different. Completely different.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we we don't get it too much here. The closest McDonald's to me is probably half hour, 45 minutes away.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Yeah. That
Yeah,
would
it's
deter me from going to McDonald's too.
yeah, yeah. We have same with Walmart, half hour, 45 minutes away.
Mhm.
There's nothing around, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's how it was at my cabin. My cabin, I had a cabin in Clinton County in
Oh,
like
okay.
near Cross Forks. And
Yeah.
it took us probably an hour and 20 to get to the Walmart in Lock Haven. So it was like, yeah. The closest like grocery store was in Renova.
Yeah.
And then you had like in Cross Forks, you had the general store, which had like your basic stuff, which I went to numerous
Mhm.
times to get stuff. Like, but the
Oh
one
yeah.
thing they didn't have was Old Bay. Like, I wanted Old Bay the one time going in there, and it was
Yeah.
just, oh my god, they didn't have it. And my dad was making shrimp on the grill, and it was just,
Oh,
it was like I needed Old Bay for that stuff. Needed it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So after we had technical difficulties, because everyone has them, everyone has technical difficulties on podcasts, on video podcasts. So
Oh yeah.
that's the aging period for deer.
Yeah.
Let's what's the ideal time to hang a deer? Because like I people don't necessarily have the room to hang a deer in their garage or in a freezer. Like when you hang a deer, you don't do you necessarily need to hang the deer, or can you like quarter it up and put it in the fridge, let it age that way, or how? What's the best way to go about it? Obviously.
So there are really tons of ways, man. If you're strapped for time or for space or something like that, at least try to let it hang overnight, I would say. Whether it be in your garage. If it is going to be above 40 degrees, though, try to get that thing, at least quartered and put on some sort of ice just to keep it cool enough there. Um, Reason being, you don't want bacteria to build and stuff like that, potentially have, meat spoilage and everything. Um, one of the best things I've ever done, man, we have an old beer fridge essentially in the garage, right? I took all the shelves out and built just a little stand essentially that I can, put a S hook through a quartered deer, through the hind quarters, or, wrap something around the front too, and just let that hang in the fridge. And I've let it hang in there for as long as 2 weeks.
Dang.
If you keep it dry, keep it cool in there, it will be plenty fine in there. And one of the tips I have for that too is you can go buy very large, thick, like bricks of salt, right? And it's like pink Himalayan salt. And yeah, they might cost a little bit of money. But if you're going to be hanging a deer for 2 weeks in the fridge, you put the money into it so it doesn't go bad. It's kind
Yeah.
of, it goes hand in hand with each other. Yeah. Um, but no, man, there's been times where I'll let it hang for 2 weeks, or I'm butchering that day because I know I'm not going to have the time later down the road, or the fridge isn't turned on right now, or I just want to get it said and done with, basically, too.
Mhm.
Um, Really, that is my biggest determining factor in how long do I age in the year is how much time do I have to age this deer.
Right.
And every deer is different though too. That's the thing. Not all of them are going to taste the same. I've had deer that I've let age for 2 weeks that were still more, gamey per se than a deer I butchered in a day. Or I've had it vice versa too. I've had, deer I've let age for 2 weeks that are some of the best things I've ever eaten. And a deer I butchered that day and cooked something, I couldn't even eat the dish because it was so gamey. It was just disgusting, basically.
Yeah, I luckily have not had the issue yet with like tasting bad or anything like that. I haven't really dabbled in the hanging my deer or letting it age. I
Yep.
kind of want to do that. Like I'm for me, it's like I get it home and I butcher it and I quarter it up and I cube it up and then I put it in the freezer, and
Right.
then when my wife wants it or I want to eat it, then I take it inside, let it thaw, and then I grind it up inside. Like
Right.
that's the next step that I did. Usually it would be like my dad would butcher our own deer. So we would bring them home and we would quarter them up, butcher them up, all that kind of stuff, cut the meat up, and then put it in the freezer in those big chunks, and
Oh
then
yeah.
bring them all out and grind them up. And that's, and then you grind it up and it'd be frozen again. So you'd unfreeze it or you keep it in the fridge and then get it out,
Yep.
grind it up, then freeze it. That's how I was raised to do it. Now starting the podcast and becoming friends with Andrew more, and it's like letting it hang and age is probably the best for the deer. It's going to taste so much better. So that's what I
Yeah.
want to do this next year. So this coming year is like when I get one, and I like to speak that into fruition that I'm going to get one, either doe, buck, doesn't matter. I'm going to get one down. Um, I want to let it hang, or I want to let it age one way or another.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's definitely something that I think every outdoorsman we put so much time into getting the deer, and the main thing that we want is the meat, right? Like that's what we go hunting for. Like yes, the
Yep.
racks on the wall, that's great, but your main thing is like that meat because you can't buy it at stores, you can't buy it really
Right.
anywhere else. You have to go out and you have to shoot it yourself, you have to harvest it yourself, you have to like the best thing is butchering yourself. Like you
Yep.
shoot it, you butcher it, and you eat it. Like you're the grocery store. Like you're the
Yeah.
grocery store right there. And I think, you know, it's you're doing yourself a favor by letting it age. And that's what I
Yeah.
want to do this next coming year with that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, man, get an old beer fridge for $100, or something like that. And um, you don't even have to put the salt blocks in there if you don't want to. Just make it so you can hang it and try it for a week, try it for 2 weeks, see what you like, see what kind of flavors you like and everything like that. Um, Now if I'm grinding, I don't necessarily let it hang per se because I really only grind maybe 5 pounds.
Mm.
But I do, I save whole front quarters, I save my shanks, I save whole muscle groups off the hind quarters, and I'm cutting basically some rib meat out for grinds. Whatever I've left to pick off the bones and everything like that is what I end up putting in the grinds. So I, I have a lot less grind time there, but I'll just get that done and over with. And, I'm not going to let a pile of meat sit in the fridge
Yeah.
for, 2 weeks in a bowl, basically, because then that will get funky. It has more pressure on it and everything. It's not in its natural state anymore. It's in contact with various other muscles, basically.
Mhm.
Whereas it has a whole hind quarter, it's doing its thing just as it was when it was connected to the whole rest of the deer, basically. It's not disturbed at that point. You're not introducing any bacteria way deep in the meat or anything like that.
So
But yeah.
with back straps, can you let them hang too and just let them age, or like is it best for the back straps to just throw directly on the grill?
Really, I've done it both ways, man. The backstrap gets used so little, really, that it's going to be tender no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Most people marinate their backstraps anyway. I mean, I still do. I'll do some marinated ones. If you let it marinate long enough, do it fresh, throw it right on the grill. Now, if you're going to go more high end, like, hey, I'm going to make filet mignon out of that thing and do a really high end dinner, yeah, maybe let it age for a little bit there. One of the biggest things I always say though too is like I leave my backstraps whole for the most part. That or I'm cutting like tomahawk steaks or something like that. Uh, Always remove the silver skin off that thing first before you
Mm-hmm.
freeze it. It saves a ton of time later. You're not getting your grandpa's old butterfly backstrap where it has a gristle in the middle that was marinated in Italian dressing. That's not a thing anymore, man. Don't
Hey,
be doing that to
hey,
yourself.
don't hate on Italian dressing and back straps. Come on, that's my
Hey,
go-to.
I'm not hating on that, man. It's the gristle in the middle.
Yeah,
Ugh,
yeah. Oh,
ugh.
for sure. Yeah, that's one thing I realized with back straps is like I like to put them in the crock pot and just let them cook all day. That's one thing I really
Okay.
like. I like to do
Yeah.
that. I like to, you know, I freeze them. I do when I get the deer. I like to put one on the grill right away.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
or the tenderloins. The tenderloins, obviously, I'm just gonna throw them on. Like they're not even going in
Yeah.
the freezer. Like it's just like I'm gonna eat them right away.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but the backstrap, I usually eat one, and then the other one at some point I make in the crock pot.
Yep.
And the one thing that I realize is that it gets you have it in the water, you have it marinating, but yet also it dries out so quick in the crock pot.
Yeah.
So quick.
Yep.
So the one guest we had on, Alex Ramondo, he said to add pineapple to it to add a little bit of like I guess
It,
like moisture
bromelain
to it.
is
Yeah.
the substance that will help break down that meat and keep it tender for you. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend Italian dressing since you'd hate Italian dressing? What's your go-to marinade for
Um. So I will touch first on the dryness of it, right? Because I think that's kind of your issue that you need to
Mhm.
deal with. It's not necessarily your marinade can't keep anything moist per se. It can just introduce some flavor to it, right? The issue with dryness, where that comes from, is there's no fat in that backstrap. There's no fat really in the interior muscles of the deer at all, for the most part. Fat is what creates juice per se, right? So when you cook a muscle, right, what you're doing to that is introducing a high heat to it. If you've ever thrown a steak in a ripping hot pan, it shrinks up immediately,
Yeah.
that squeezes all the juices right out of it for the most part, right?
Mhm.
How do you keep those in there? How's a steak still juicy when you just squeezed all the juice out of it, right? If you take a look at like Wagyu beef, right, and it's full of fat, that is the key right there. That thing will be the juiciest piece of steak you've ever ate because there's so much fat in it. So to circumvent wild game kind of drying out, right? There's a couple things you can do. One of like my favorite ones is injecting it with like butter or beef tallow, or if I get a big enough, doe or buck in, November basically, before the rut preferably, because during rut the fat does not taste good. I'll take all that fat and render it down into tallow, and I will use that to cook with too. Um, if you do it right, it does not. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I hate venison fat; it tastes like crap." If you do it right, it does not. You just have to treat it right for the most part.
Mhm.
Um, but really, get an injector. You want a fat that's not going to be too hot, where once you inject it, it's going to start to cook it. Um, just it's workable at room temp for the most part, maybe like 90 degrees or something like that. Try to get it evenly throughout there. That will really help that thing stay nice and moist in there. Um, Another option too is kind of cut it, and this is getting into more butchery skills here, knife skills. but you kind of want to fillet it open, right? In several different variations, almost like a rolling fillet, essentially, where you're gonna flatten it out for the most part. Make a nice compound butter, spread that thing in there, roll it up with, maybe some cheese and spinach or something like that. Get some butcher twine and tie it up, and that butter in there will kind of start to seep all through the meat and try to keep that stuff nice and tender in there. Yeah, that's really the issue though. Is wild game almost has no fat, and that
Mhm.
is the key to keeping it nice and moist.
Well, I apologize to all the women out there that were listening to this and they heard the word moist 3 times. Now 4. No, but oh man, you just made me even more hungry. Like
Good.
that was, oh man. Yeah, backstrap is like something that you can't mess with. And I feel like I mess it up so much, like, and that's like a shame. Like that's shameful to mess up the backstrap, And it's like, I need to learn this stuff though. I need to learn the proper ways to cook a backstrap so that I can, first, my wife never was into hunting. Like no one in her family would ever hunted before. So like
Right.
when she met me, that's the first time she had venison. So like she has in her mind of what backstrap tastes like right now from what I made. I want to improve that by cooking it the proper way and having this, different ways of cooking it.
Right.
That's
Right.
that's the goal. You want someone to come over who has never had wild game before, who has never had venison before, and then you give them something that's like, holy shit, like that was good. That's
Oh
like
yeah.
that has to make you feel so good when that happens, and I'm sure that's happened to you multiple times.
Oh yeah. And it's a really great feeling for that. Really, man, to kind of fix your issue, ditch the crock pot.
Okay.
That
Okay.
a lot of people are, and I'm not looping you into this group either, but a lot of people are under the assumption that wild game has to be cooked well done.
Mhm.
Um, dude, I eat my venison, I cook it to 130 degrees internally.
Okay.
That's it. It is the most medium rare thing you will eat. It's delicious. It is full of flavor, full of juice still. That's that's my biggest key there too, is cook it to the right temperature, because once you overcook it too, you can't go back. You can always, cut it, throw it back on if it's too rare. You can't ever make that thing
Mhm.
rare again. Um,
Yeah.
a really kind of great thing to experiment with that too, if you're not great on like guessing temperatures and stuff like that, or using a thermometer, pick up a sous vide thing, and they have so many uses now. They're coming down in price. I think you can get them for like $80 now, right? And you use tap water in a stock pot basically,
Mhm.
and you set that thing to 120 degrees, marinate that, cook your backstrap right in the marinade. When it's done, get your grill ripping hot, sear it up a little bit. It'll be one of the best backstraps you've ever had. And you made a marinade and turned the grill on, basically. That's it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a really good tip right there. I like that. Now, what about, so everyone has like a jet boil or a blue or fire maple, like one
Yeah,
of those camp stoves,
yeah,
and you pour water in, you cook the instant meals, all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Is there something like, say you get one in the backcountry, and
yeah.
then is there something you could make with just that, that little cup you have and water and, make something out of that?
Oh, absolutely, man. So, like I did it today, right? You can put a pan on top of those.
Hmm.
Like I have a little 6-inch cast iron that I take out with me, right? My lunch after turkey hunting today was some potatoes that I fried up. I took some butter out with me, right? I thawed a pack of venison pastrami that I made in October. That was all chopped up, threw that in there. I picked some wild leeks this morning on my way like to turkey hunt. Uh, Rinsed them off with water, cut them up, threw those in there, sauteed those up too. Took a little bit of cheese out with me. I had a home cooked meal in 10 minutes basically, 3 miles into the woods hunting turkey. That's all it took. It If you can get creative, then you can do anything you want to. And I'll tell you too, man, my little camp stove that I have is about 6 years old, and I got it for about $10 at Dunham's. Sporting Goods one
There
day,
you go.
and that's it, man. Like I don't have a jet boil or anything, but I can put a pan on top of it, you know. And the
Yeah.
thing it came with, it packs down real small. All of my fuel and that thing and the lighter fits inside of. Like I have a little cup for it too, you know. It came in, fits all in that, nice in a bag. Carry an extra pan with me, and that's it.
Man, I even just thought of that as you were talking about that. Like, if you have just one of those cups, like if that's all you take out with you, like one of the,
Yep.
like I just bought one actually off Amazon. It's like the blue version. It's an knockoff
Yep.
Jetboil brand, pretty much. It was
Yep.
like $50. So I was like,
Yeah.
why the heck not? You know, first one ever. You could take that cup off there and have the open flame, and then you could just like put the venison on a stick, kind of like
Yeah.
roast it over there like a marshmallow, and just
Yep.
let it go over there
Absolutely.
for a little bit, and then you can just eat it. Like it's
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely, man.
yeah. So I mean, there's a lot you can do with those things, and I made ramen in it the other day. Like I put
Yeah.
like just ramen in. I my first one that I had was it was one of those Walmart brand ones where you just buy the
Oh yeah.
dehydrated food. It
Yep.
was beef stroganoff, I think. I think it was beef
Mm.
stroganoff. I
Yeah.
was like, dang, this is good. Like that,
Right.
those things are good.
They're not half bad, yeah. And dude,
No.
I went down a big rabbit hole with backpacking one time, and I got into like the high end version of the freeze dried meals, and it is
Yeah.
insane, man. I mean, like I was eating like chicken tiki masala out in the woods. I was like, what am I doing right now? I cannot believe this.
You had your monocle on and then your pinky out when you're eating with your fork and all that kind of stuff. Like
Right?
it's
Yeah, man. Dude, I have this concept too to do a video this year. So to preface this too, I took the last 4 years and really wanted to develop my woodsmanship too. So I hunted strictly off the ground for the last 4 years, archery, rifle, everything. And it wasn't like, oh hey, I'm taking a ground blind, and it's I have a chair. Where
yeah,
do I hunt? You know, where do I go? I can go anywhere. So this year, finally comfortable with my woodsmanship skills, basically, which not that I wasn't before, but they're to a point where I can start helping people learn about it too.
mhm,
So I'm like, okay, I can get out of this phase a little bit. I want to get and end up getting to do a saddle this year. But what I want to end up doing too is taking an extra platform up with me and cooking like a 5-star, like, hey man, here is steak au poivre while I'm archery hunting, you know, or something like that.
yeah, that would be epic. Like that would be
If
cool
only
because
I could get a doe to come by so I can shoot her as I'm cooking too. That would be
yeah,
the best.
Ethan and I had that idea. So like we have stands now, hang on stands, and
Yep.
I was like, we gotta. I was like, this was before I got my camp stove, and I was like, we gotta get like a picture of like the camp stove going with the smoke coming out of it, and it's like bubbling up, and I'm
Oh
full draw on on a dough or something,
yeah.
and he takes a
Yeah.
picture of it. I was like, that's exactly like that would be cool to have like you're about to make dinner while dinner is walking in front of you. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. See,
and
that's the type of outdoor cooking videos I want, man. Like,
yes,
what are you cooking in the tree stand today?
yeah, dude, you could make a whole YouTube series of that. Like that, people would
That
watch that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Ugh.
sure. Because I mean, you think about it, like when I first like got introduced to hunting, my dad
Yep.
introduced me, but like the shows he was watching were like the ones where they go out to these box blinds and they just wait for the deer to come out in the field, their right deer to come out. Like now
Yep.
it's like it's more relatable with everything out there. You know, you have like Beau Martonik who's scouting all this big piece of public, or you have Johnny Stewart
Yeah.
who's showing all everything like that. Like you have Steve Shirk, you have
Yep.
the hunting public, you have all these guys that are like doing it the way that most about 80% of hunters are doing it. Like
Right.
it's you're putting the time in because you want to have that experience and you also want to have like the thrill. Like that's the main thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that YouTube that video series would be like killer because I mean it's everyone does it in the woods. Like everyone's just go out and just cook while they're while they're hunting and then
Right.
still
Yeah.
say hunting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. I remember one of my first couple years in rifle opener day in PA. I was hunting a little bit away from my dad, and he was like, "Hey, come down. You know, we'll eat lunch or whatever." And we had brought like cans of soup and stuff out, and I was like, oh, great, cold soup today for lunch, great. It's rainy, it's crappy out. I get there, and Dad has a fire just ripping in the middle of the woods while he's hunting whitetail. And I shit you not, man, we had some come through like 300 yards away. They did not care
No.
what we were doing. Granted, there's so much pressure that day, but I mean, that's awesome. Like, we were just cooking soup over an open fire in the middle of the woods with some guns and walk by deer,
Yeah. I mean, that's because it makes sense, because we had it happen up at cabin. Like, me and my dad were working on the shed in the backyard, and we had music blaring, all that kind of stuff. And we're putting shingles on this shed, and we look over, and there's a doe coming out, like just coming to the apple tree that's right behind the cabin. It's like, what? Like, I went to turn the music down, and my dad's like, no, just leave it. Like, she's used to it. Like, she's coming in with it on. Like, deer are very curious. Like, they're very curious animals. Like, back to the woodsmanship thing. With the woodsmanship, did you get really like scouting more and like looking for hot sign, or like especially ground
Yeah, so a lot of it was looking for hot sign. Part of, I guess, my whole journey too was like, I went and got a wildlife degree after I got out of the Navy, because I wanted to be outdoors and everything, and I was like, I'll get a degree that lets me work out there. Well, ended up taking a job in forestry, and naturally we had to learn our trees as well. So like, and, map reading, everything like that, just learning how to read the land out there of like, okay, here's, clearly here's a major trail right here, but here's this one little path, right, that shoots somewhere else. I can see that, and a lot of people tend to like ignore those or not pick up on them and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to go explore that too. Where does that take me? And oftentimes it would be a connecting trail between two major trails. So it's like, your major pressure too is going to get applied to these major trails, because, to be honest, most hunters are lazy. They want the easier kills. I would hunt these smaller trails that, okay, they might not have the same amount of deer come through, but that's going to be where they go when they're getting pressure on the other trails. That being able to identify food sources out in the woods for deer too. One of the things I learned, like getting my degree, deer need to eat between 8 and 9 pounds of food a day just to survive. Like, they are constantly eating, and that's, if you can learn how to identify food, as well as, find a water source, find cover, that's everything they need to live right there. And deer are going to be lazy too. They don't want to live in a place where I got to walk, 500 yards one way to get food, and then back to cover, and another 500 yards the other way to get water. They want everything relatively close, just like we do. We have a fridge in our house, and we don't have to go 10 different places to get our food to make dinner,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like, did you see how far between those main trails, like with that small trail cutting off from that one big trail to another big trail, how far of a distance? I mean, I know it changes with every trail, but like different areas, all that kind of stuff. But how far roughly was it?
Generally you're looking at like 80 to like 120 yards, I would say. And it's a lot of it deals with elevation change too for those trails. If you're on flat ground, you're going to be able to see most of the trails, because they're going to be beaten down regardless. You know what I mean? But if you are up higher, say you're walking a ridge or something like that, or even just a little bit of an elevation change, whether it's 20 feet on the topo map or 40 or something like that, where that trail tends to lead tends to go up or downhill to another trail that, what I've come to find too, will take them around a land feature too. So if there's a big swath of some sort of dense thicket, sometimes your major trails aren't necessarily always going to go right through those. They tend to go around the outsides of those. So your minor trails, one might go through because, hey, they got spooked and they had to run the other way or something like that. Or they went downhill to get around this thing because that's where they were heading anyway, something like that.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it makes sense, because I you do see those trails, like you do, but as hunters, you're like, oh, this trail's bigger. I'm going to follow this one. But
right.
it makes sense to go up because those could possibly be like the escape routes for those buck. Like they're walking those heavy trails. Like I found a heavy trail with like 5 or 6 scrapes on it. Like it's
Yeah.
150 yards off the main road, even like,
Right.
and near an access point. Like those are spots that are kind of overlooked of recent because everyone wants to go deeper in the woods. Have you seen
Right.
that too? Like with gaining more woodsmanship, have you seen that more and more too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's people are starting to, especially up in my area. My area is turning into like a little honey hole throughout the whole U.S. Just at Allegheny National Forest. It is. We're starting to produce monsters here. People are starting to catch on to that, and
Mm-hmm.
you're getting all of these. I hate to say it, these guys that they get a little bit of money, they live in the city, they like to hunt, they're going to come up here, and they got their e-bag, they got everything that doesn't make them a better hunter, and they think, oh, well, the deer are further into the woods, I'm going to go there. Nah, like they're not, man. You go up to my camp right now, there's rubs like in my camp yard
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, or like the one spot that always, always, always produces at least 3 to 4 kills a year for us is about 50 yards off of a snowmobile trail that cuts through, and that's about 50 yards off of the main like paved road. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
deer do not like human pressure; they will do anything to avoid it. So when people go deeper, they come closer to the road,
Mhm.
essentially.
And vice
Yep.
versa. So like once people start catching on to the trend of hunting close to the roads, they're going to go
Yep.
do the opposite again. So like deer are very smart. Like
Yep.
I I started catching on to this because I was like, okay, I'm going to go. Last year I was like, I'm going to go deeper in the woods here. Put
Yeah.
trail cameras, found big community scrape, put it there. Got a really nice buck on camera. I was like, okay, he's in this area because no one else is hunting this area. That's not the case. Everyone was hunting that area because it was deeper in the woods and it was hard to get to. And
Yep.
then I started coming out. I was like, you know what? What's in front of this like parking area? I started following it down, placed the camera there because there was some really big rubs. Like there was like a bush that had like all these limbs coming out. I'm not good with trees either. So
Right.
that's one thing I need to get better on with my woodsmanship is learning the trees.
Yeah.
But there was like every little branch on this tree was rubbed. And I was like, shit. And then there was one that was chest high. So I put a camera there and I got a big buck on camera walking there, and it was like during late season muzzleloader. It was during
Yep.
that time of year, and I found his bed. Only got the one picture of him, so I think he's still alive, but I'm not sure. Like he could be gone by now. But then
Right. Yeah.
I was like, okay, if I put a camera here, where else is close to the road that they could possibly be? So this goes back to this area where I found 5 scrapes, and I hung a camera there, and I have a big buck already on the camera that's like 5 inches of growth, and he already has his main beam growing with a
Oh
brow
wow.
tine.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
you have that already, and it's May 4th. Like,
Right.
I'm hoping you're the 10 because if he was a 10 last year and he was big the prior year, he was a nice 9 prior, and then this
Yeah.
year he was a 10. Next year, I mean, it's
He might be a monster. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
he's big for the area down here because
Yeah.
down here there's a lot of Amish. Amish push it
Oh
out.
yeah.
And they just
Yeah.
shoot anything.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh, I know.
which I think that in turn leads them to getting close to the road because of all that Amish pressure going through the
Yeah.
thick stuff in the middle, push them out to the road more. So,
Yep. Yeah. And that one way to kind of think about it too is they're dumb per se, right? But they're also smart, right?
Mhm.
But in reality, their entire purpose here is to survive. That's all they know. They just want to survive. So they're going to eat, they're going to drink, they're going to sleep, and they're going to avoid any other animal in the woods that's bigger than them for the most part or makes more noise than them. And that's a lot of what pressure is kind of considered is deer adapting to human intervention at that point.
Yeah,
Where are they going to go? Where the people aren't.
yeah,
Sometimes, yeah, it is deeper. Oftentimes, it's not. It's where they just walk through and, hide in plain sight,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. I mean, I've seen that where like you walk by a spot once and then you walk by it again and then a deer jumps. But like you
Yep.
walked by it like once before and nothing moved, and you walk by it 10 minutes later and you jump a deer. Like
Yep.
like my dad has always said, the one tip that he always told me was like, when you're walking through the woods, when you're still hunting, ground hunting, when you're walking your stand, whatever, especially during rifle, take like, if you can see, if it's daytime, take like 5 steps, stop. Take another 5 steps, stop.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's happened numerous times where like you're doing that, all of a sudden a deer jumps. And it's like,
Yep.
it just, they know when to leave and when to stay. Like
Yep.
they just do. It's their nature, you know? So what did from hunting on the ground last year,
Mhm.
what did that like teach you? Like what would be your biggest tip for someone who's hunting on the ground? Like this spot I was talking about, I couldn't really find a tree to hang a tree stand in or a saddle, and like they're all small trees. So it's like,
Right.
what would be your biggest tip for that to hunt on the ground in archery season?
Find Well, hey, find the trail, right?
Yeah.
Find the general spot you want to hunt, but extend that out too. When you're scouting, like, yeah, maybe I find the trail. I'm gonna scout a lot of that trail. Probably 400 or 500 yards both ways of
Mhm.
the initial starting point, right? And while you're doing that, look for natural cover, essentially, right? Somewhere where a human can hide, whether it be a blowdown or a tree fell over, or there's some laurel or black bushes or blackberry bushes or something like that, right? Um, I use beech thickets a lot just because they like to stump sprout and root sprout. So, and they make great cover too, and they're easily cut down and everything like that. Um, but a lot of that is also where can you now shoot too,
Mhm.
right? Because it's a lot different on the ground than it is up in the tree stand, right? Like, go find your favorite hunting spot, climb your tree, take a shot, put a target out, take a shot at 20 yards. Now go down to the base of that tree and try to shoot. It's a completely different shot, right?
Mhm.
And especially if you're hunting close enough to a trail to get a shot too, there's a good chance that deer is staring you in the face at 20 yards. You
Yeah.
are eye level with that thing. You need to hide as good as you can, or essentially be able to ambush them, be able to shoot them without them knowing it off of the ground, where, and a lot of that too is what are they going to pay attention to in their surroundings, basically, right? Um, if you have a road on one side and not a road on the other, I would probably hunt the other side of the road because the cars coming by, they may hear that and tend to look that way, and it might buy you a little bit more time.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
because the one spot right away when you said find the thick cover, like get somewhere where you're covered pretty well. And right
Yep.
away I was like, there's a little bit of pines right there with like little undergrowth as well. And I was
Yep.
like, I wonder if that's close enough to the trail to hunt it. But then that's the way they're gonna be looking at the road when they go. And
Right.
I get a bunch of cameras and they always tend to look down towards the road when they
Yeah.
go to this scrape. So now I got to figure out if there's a place up higher that I can look down, like kind of like down at them on the ground still as they
Right.
walk by. So like I'm shooting towards the road with my bow, but I'm far enough away from the road that I'm not actually shooting at cars.
Right. Yep.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yep.
I also think that, you know, in my mind, deer don't like to hear themselves walk. So like
Right.
by them being close to the road or by being close to a stream, I think it helps with them, hear other things around them instead of themselves walking. Like they can hear someone
Right.
else walking up to them. They can hear a coyote following them, all that kind of stuff. So I think that'll also help me with the noise aspect as well. Like if I got to move, like when they're looking down the road, I can move a little bit to get the shot.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And one of the bigger tips, or yeah, I guess bigger tips I could give too would be extend your range with your bow, right?
Mhm.
Especially if you're going to hunt off the ground. Out of a tree, it's pretty hard to take, an 80-yard shot.
Yeah.
Um, I'm comfortable shooting, I would absolutely take a shot on the deer at 100 yards, but I practice that all the time. And when I pick a spot, I know how far I'm going to be able to shoot, If it's 100 yards out
Mhm.
there, but I have a little bit of beach brush at 80 yards, I'm not taking that shot. I know not to take that shot. Um, but that really helped me be able to get away from the trails that they're going to be walking to,
Mhm.
and keep their attention off of what is in their immediate area of danger per se. And that would like you're able to hide in more spots when you get a little bit further out and everything like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I'm gonna try, if I can't find a tree that hangs a tree I can hang a tree stand in, I'm gonna try doing from the ground, because this spot is too hot to pass up. Like early season, early October. I mean, this year in PA, I think the opening day is actually September 29th. I think it's that Saturday right there.
Yeah, I think it's early this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, September hunting PA. How about it?
Right. That's going to be awesome for once.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things you can do too, man, is find if it's public land or whatever, just find some sticks, shove them in the ground, make something that will break up your pattern a little bit. Naturally, don't do it the day you're going to hunt. This is going to take some prep, some scouting, and everything, but make a little natural blind for yourself. Just make sure that you can shoot through it still.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good idea to just move some already fallen sticks down, get set up, and, make sure I can, like you said, shoot through it, maybe do like, I want to hang more cameras there, because I have one right now, only right there. It's a cell cam right over a scrape, so I don't go in there and disturb it all the time.
Right.
But there's a spot that actually V's off. Like you said about the trails going down.
Yeah.
This one they're on is very heavy, and then they have like a shorter, like a smaller one going downhill kind of towards the road.
Yep.
But it loops back around to the main trail again. So I kind of want to put one maybe down on that trail or at that V where it splits off, to looking directly down the trail, just to see what's going on. But that's my goal for this year, is hopefully trying to get one down in that area this year. But what would be your biggest tip about wild game cooking or butchering, whichever one you want to give the biggest tip on?
Find the reason you're doing this, right? And really take that to heart, right? So for me, I'm very like Scandinavian in my ways, right? Like I have a very deep connection to nature and everything. So for me, I'm taking a life of an animal, right? I'm taking that life so I can provide for myself, right? So to respect that animal, I'm going to make the best dish I possibly can with it, right? I'm going to put as much effort, time, everything into that dish, because in doing so, you almost give that animal a little bit of immortality, because now you're making a memory of that. And you can share that memory with other people, or other people can have that same memory. If you make dinner, Thanksgiving dinner, and say you cook 4 backstraps for it, for 10 people, right? Well, 10 people now remember those 2 deer that you killed because of that, right? That's just going to live in their heads, and that is how you really respect that animal. I think a lot of it is just find your ethics and really embrace them right there. And to me, that's the biggest part of hunting. Even if I don't kill anything, as long as I know that and now mind you too, I don't use trail cameras. I don't use ground blinds. I don't use attractants, salt blocks, mineral licks, anything, right? I find hot sign, I read the land, and I go. I make it as hard as I can. I'm not saying for most people to do that, because it took 4 years of struggling to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
But that really like gave me an appreciation for these animals,
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm gonna I lost the cabin. I got out of the cabin in Clinton County, so I'm hunting towards Bald Eagle, which is still a big area. And I'm at my wits. I'm like, kind of like, do I want to hang trail cameras up there, or do I just want to like go up there during rifle season when rifles around, just try and track a deer, all that kind of stuff. So like, I'm still playing that game in my head right now, what I want to do. But I do want to try and do that whole no camera thing in one area. Like I might hang cameras down here near my house just to see, because it's heavy pressure, to see where they go. But then Bald Eagle, I might just, track them, see where they're going naturally,
Yep. And that taught me so much right there. Just learning how they move. I don't have trail camera proof. I don't have anything like that. I just have all the knowledge in my head of this is what I see. This is how, when I put it into my own equation, this is the answer I got out of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. I also love the queso. So thank you for that
Thank you.
recipe. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I I didn't get to eat it all because I was too busy, talking. But I ate like 95% of it. So it's
Good,
yeah.
good.
Um, tell the people where they can follow you, where they can buy your seasonings too, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, Instagram, you can hit me up, the Hungry Huntsman. My name's Gunnar Emberg too. If you want some seasoning, shoot me a DM on there. I will ship out, pretty much every week for the most part. Or you can come see me in person too if you're around my area. I'm up in Kane, Pennsylvania too. Facebook, same thing, Hungry Huntsman.
cool, man. I'm glad we were able to finally make this work and finally get you on here, and I can finally chat with you in person, kind of. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but it was fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime.
Cool. Yeah, we'll have you back on. I want to hear about more tracking and woodsmanship, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, heck yeah, I'm down
Yeah.
for it.